So plastic recycling. Everybody is talking about plastic. Oh, when I go to Fiji, there is a lot of plastic in the lagoons. So, okay, but what do we do? Because it's not because we are going once a year to collect plastic bottles in the sea that will have a solution. Once again, value creation. If there is value, no worry, people will go and collect the plastic and we'll make sure it will go to the right way. We have technology and solution to produce recyclable plastic with food grade quality to be processed by the food and beverage industry. It works, it's happening. 29 plastic recovery facility is not longer R&D. I will repeat a little bit that concept, but I just want to make sure that you understand you'll take away that it's no longer R&D. I know we have the heavy industry in the audience as well, so I thought it might be interesting to talk about product recovery, regeneration of catalysts, of acid, because usually this segment of the market is cornered. Everybody talk to them that you're already dirty, you're killing the planet, but actually we need aluminium to have airplanes, we need hydrogens, we need petrochemicals, so we cannot stop heavy industry. But how we can help them to be just more circular and reduce the impact on the environment? We process 7 million tons of waste, hazardous waste a year, and we produce energy out of it, and we regenerate material. Just right now, I'm working with a company to take their spent catalyst, sent to a facility to be treated, regenerated, and sent back. And actually, they will probably make money out of it. By today, they are paying for their landfilling. So just to give you the idea that there is money that we can generate out of circular economy. As you can see, you probably know that's perfect. So organic material. Everybody is talking about food waste. Oh, that's a shame with all people starving and you need to do more. Once again, what's the value inside the organic waste? Energy, proteins. How do we make it happen? Just look at the nature. If you look at organic waste, I think everybody, if you look at your leftover during the summer, you will see flies and bugs coming to this beautiful plate of cheese. I'm using cheese French and smell. I remember having a talk with my mother. And they were talking about the process, circular process of collecting the bugs and making proteins out of it. I was doing that for a century ago. It's just the reality. Same for compost, biogas, something that we used to do. And New Zealand is an agricultural country. It's the same. We used to do that. It's just forgot. And there are really good opportunity to go back to something circular around organic material. Once again, if you look at the figures on the left corner, it's no longer R&D. And sometimes I feel a little bit frustrated when I heard here in New Zealand that we need to think about regulation, we need to align ourselves to make it happen. No, let's just start. Okay? The farmers are doing it, so let's help the farmers to expand and do it better. I think that's the last one before I just overkill you with a couple of figures. Landfill. Oh, it's a shame. We don't want to operate landfill. It's dirty. We should let that for children. Actually, it's a mine where you have biogas sitting all day, and you have protocols to rehabilitate the landfill. So then just think about what we do with our landfills to look at it, not ignore them. I was in a country before where the main landfill was right below the window of the prince, but he was just telling me, I don't look at this window because landfill, that dump site. Actually, it's not a landfill. So I'm using the other window. I said, no, you should look at that window. I said, there are a lot of value inside this landfill. And step by step, they started to look at that. And now they capture the gas out of the landfill while it's an oil and gas country. And I think that's probably the future for New Zealand. Just last slide before I give the floor to my colleagues. Once again, it's not to show off. It's just to give you an idea of the size and the value that we are creating out of waste worldwide. And we'll be happy to do that in New Zealand as well. Up to you, Jenny.
Thank you so much. I will also share my screen.
You can drop me.
Yeah. Coming up?
Yeah, perfect. We can see you, Jenny.
Okay, brilliant. Over to you, David.
Cool. Kia ora, everyone. David Maucor. I work for Edge Environment. So I'm just going to do a quick intro. We're doing a bit of a double act today with Jenni. So if you don't mind, just go to the next slide. Jenni, thank you. So at Edge Environment, we're basically a 100% sustainability consultancy. We're based out of Australia, New Zealand, and a few other countries across the world. We've recently set up an office in New Zealand. So since October, we're based in Auckland. There's 4 of us here. We're actually looking for 2 more, including someone as senior in circular economy. So there you go. If you're passionate about this, hit us up, and they'll be reporting to Jenni. What we do at Edge is we combine science, strategy, and storytelling to deliver sustainable outcomes. So, for example, the science is all the technical kind of number crunching things that we can do, and you name it, we could probably do it in that science space. The strategy is helping organization bring together, understand what their actual material issues, what they want to deliver, and put that into strategy and action plans. And the storytelling is actually the part is recognizing you can't actually deliver all these outcomes unless you actually bring people on board. So the storytelling is about actually creating that compelling story, which get your people on board or your stakeholders on boards, etc., to drive those outcomes. And next slide, I've got 2 slides that talk about actually what we do in practice. So leadership and communication is really what I just talked about there, is actually understanding what is your leadership position in sustainability, and actually formulating that and getting people on board to understand that and drive transformation in your organizations. ESG and strategy is effectively that, is actually helping organizations formulate their strategies, understanding their material issues, and basically communicating that into actual strategic plans and action plans, all the way down to action planning. Circular economy is what Jenni's going to tell us about today. So circular economy and life cycle thinking. And what we do in that space is develop frameworks for organizations, strategies for organizations, as well as doing life cycle assessments and a whole bunch of service around waste. If you go to the next slide, Jenni. Sustainable and ethical procurement is about helping you understand the sustainability risks in your supply chain. So we do hotspotting, we work a lot in that modern slavery space, and we also help embed sustainable practices in your procurement processes. In the carbon and climate resilience, we do everything around basically climate change resilience and understanding risks and adaptation plans, as well as everything that relates to carbon footprinting and decarbonization strategies for organizations. And last of all, but not least, is a team that I'm part of, which is really helping understand how to drive sustainable outcomes in the built environment space. And we really break that down between the building sector and the infrastructure sector. So, and that's my specialization, is in the infrastructure team. I should mention that my own role at Edge is in that infrastructure portfolio, but is also leading and driving our business in NZ. Now I'm going to introduce Jenni, because she's the core of our presentation today. So Jenni leads our circular economy and lifecycle thinking team. She's got 15 years experience in that space. Before that, she created an organization called Circle Co, which was a startup that did circular economy strategies. That was her little baby that she created. And before that, she works at Telstra and through the design and graphic and circular economy development there. So I'll hand over to Jenni. You'll see that we're a passionate bunch of people at Edge. So hopefully that will come across in the preso. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Kiara, good day. Bonsoir. I also would like, before I start, to pay my respects of the Gadigal people, the custodian of the land on which I meet you today, which is one of the Australian Indigenous clans. So what I'd like to do now is share with you some of the things to keep in mind on how to get started in circular economy. And before we get into action, I think something that's really, really important is actually thinking about what sort of mindset we currently have and what needs to change. As it was introduced by Emma at the start, we have that take, make, waste process that feels very comfortable because it's quite simple and easy to control as an organization. But really, if we want to start realigning with nature and have circular practices and really help regenerate the planet and maintain it, there's a range of mindsets we want to have in mind. The first one is around system thinking and really understanding that everything is interconnected and we're part of a bigger system ourselves. And so it's really about understanding the ripple effects of decisions that we make and how we integrate into the social element of the system, the products and what we're producing as a society, but then also the planet's ecosystem that we're part of. Another really important mindset is around life cycle thinking. So really starting to think about when we make decisions, the consequences across the whole life cycle of a product or a service, and really looking at different factors that might come to play around social, economic, and environmental impacts. Another really key mindset is around biomimicry. Nature has billions of years of innovation that we can tap into and that we've forgotten, as Alex mentioned before. And there's a range of really innovative solutions that mimic what nature does and really translate that into industrial and innovative processes, which really offer a range of ideas for organizations to deliver their products without impacting the planet. The key other mindset is around circular redesign or design, and really taking that Venn diagram that you have on that side here, where not only we look at business viability, technology and feasibility, but then bringing the desirability from a human point of view, but also the circularity aspect and what nature needs. And it's kind of the innovation needs to happen across those 4 areas to really find solutions that are more sustainable. Collaboration through distributed network is also super important. We can't do it alone. Circular economy, as I said, is part of a bigger system, and it's really about reimagining how we collaborate and work together through different partnerships. And finally, it's all about activating change and storytelling. Very difficult to convince people to do something if they can't relate to it, and everybody has a personal story through work or personal life that they can start share amongst their colleagues and around inner circles to really influence how people actually change. Another way to really get started in the circular economy space is to seek alternative business models. And Alex had a wide range of business models that Veolia is driving at the moment. And so if we look at it from a whole economy side of things, there are 5 key business models that you can get inspiration from and start adapting to your business. The first one on the top is circular supply, which is really about rethinking the materials that come into your processes, or what you're sourcing in terms of materials, or what you're putting on the market. And so it's really applying circular thinking on where are they coming from? Are they renewable? Can we be regenerating nature as we're taking that supply? If we look into the next stage of the life cycle of products, we can look at sharing platform. When we put products on the market, at the moment, they're pretty much marketed to go for one user. Sharing platform is a way to actually share access to particular products without having ownership transferred across to the end consumer. That can be applied for your end customers, like B2C, but it also works for B2B. So organizations sharing together across their value chain materials or equipment, to avoid having that ownership and then extend the product life of those equipments, for instance. Again, another way to be circular is looking at product life extension, which is really around extending the value of a product and the use of a product in its current shape. And that's through upgrading, remanufacturing, repairing, and really looking at what we have produced today and how do we help consumers and organizations get the maximum value out of that product without having to create a whole new one all over again. And coming to the tail end of the whole life cycle is recovery and recycling. And I want to really reinforce that circular economy tends to be reduced to better recycling. But as you've seen here, there's a range of other strategies that should be thought about before getting to that stage, which is also really important. Once we've exhausted all options, it's really about how do we maximize the recyclability and the recovery of materials, break them down into smaller pieces that then can be reutilized in the whole cycle of life. And then the final one that sort of underpins all of that is product as a service. So it's different to sharing platform because it is an organization keeping ownership of their products. So if you take a washing machine, for instance, and you sell access to that washing machine, but it remains the property of the business that's manufactured with the product. That way, it allows you to create more durable products, really invest a lot of R&D and technology to create something really robust, but then reap the benefit over a longer period of time. So now I have a few examples to take you through just to show you it's not just talk. As Alex said, there's a lot happening already. I really love this example. This is an Australian and New Zealand-based business that's called Sustainable Salons, and they're all about diverting all the waste produced in hairdressers and pet stores, and by segregating from the points of sale all the different waste streams and then looking at finding other applications of those wastes. One of them is all the post-consumer plastic shampoo bottles that have been transformed into sunglasses. So this is coming from a really interesting partnership from two different industries that have nothing to do with each other. Dresden is the partner for sunglasses, so they're a sunglasses or glasses business, and a partner with sustainable salons to transfer more than 90,000 kilos of plastic from salon waste and translate them into 100% recyclable sunglasses. So that's kind of a cool story, and that sort of draws on the circular supply and resource recovery and recycling business model. The next example is one that's close to home as well for you, which is Citizen. You might have heard of them. This is coming from a donut checker who identified in the UK a new product called Toast A, which is a craft beer made of stalled bread that was being wasted in supermarkets. He really loved the concept and brought that to New Zealand, and it's really kind of a double win situation here where we're solving social issues where, you know, we're wasting foods that could have gone to feed other people, and we're actually upcycling that into another consumable product, which is beer. So it's kind of a cool story, and they won the Sustainable Business Award in 2021, which is part of the network, Sustainable Business Network. Another really interesting example is all around procurement. So if you look at how you change your procurement, you have a way to integrate more circular economy outcomes. This is an example of a project we've done for a region north of Sydney in Australia, where a lot of councils came together, local councils, to find a way to procure more recycled content. And so we helped them develop a framework to really understand circular economy outcomes they can achieve and then translate that into procurement practices that helps all the key stakeholders involved in procurement to assess and compare options beyond just the economic and performance elements, but also looking at environmental impacts and really help them favor more circular solutions in the end. And so here again, the power of that example is collaboration across the different councils. Sometimes the volume and the scale is too small at one council level. They got together around 6 or 7 councils to procure that service, to really understand how else can they procure their systems, their products, and they can implement those strategies together to then create a market demand that's going to be attractive to businesses and really show them they can invest in recycled content in their products. And finally, the final example I think is also really cool. It's coming from a company called Aspire. They're a marketplace that does matchmaking online between either different suppliers and organizations that are seeking products at a very local level. So you use the online platform, enter what sort of products you're looking for, and other people that have excess products or waste, or something that we consider as waste, advertise that on the platform, and it's sort of a matchmaking happening there. So here on this slide, I have an example of Silvermart that was supported by the Sunshine Coast Council. So again, enabled by local government, and they partnered together with War Contracting to repurpose concrete material. And so here you can see some of the key metrics that were captured. The platform is actually tracking the CO2 savings that are being made, and those exchanges are either free. Some organizations should exchange between each other for free, or they associate a price to the material that they want to sell. And that is also a great system you can implement if you have a very large organization and you're doing, for instance, construction work. You want to be able to move around between different sites, waste that's coming out from a building, for instance, and translate that into infrastructure groundwork, for instance. So it's a really great tool that either helps you collaborate across your local region, but also within your own organization. So I guess to conclude here the presentation, I guess the key takeaway here is that first we need to start asking different types of questions and adopt system thinking and life cycle thinking to really look at the world in a different light and identify opportunities that are actually relevant to you. The second one is about getting inspired by circular business models and looking at ways to integrate those even at a very small scale on one product or one project or one initiative. And then obviously what's really key in the success of circular economy is collaborating together within your organization and really looking at problems with very different mindsets, a different perspective from your business, but also outside contribution. And all of that, it hopefully helps find a fit for purpose circular solution that creates value. Because it's all about value, not just, making the planet a better place and being philanthropic. It's really about finding value and making a business model that works for your organization. And that's it from me. Thank you for listening. I will hand over to James now and just share his presentation.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. So Jenny, will you control the presentation or?
Yes.
Yeah.
You just tell me what to do.
Okay. Great. Kia toto, bonsoir tout le monde. I'm James from the Sustainable Business Network, and we're going to really be talking about some accessible tools to help businesses really integrate with the circular economy and move into some of those circular business models that we've been hearing about. And so I lead the work at the Sustainable Business Network to transition to a low carbon circular economy. And so we're talking about sort of starting with the circular economy. And so I thought I'd just relate how I first realized that there was something seriously and fundamentally wrong with this linear take-waste economy, and that we needed an alternative. I didn't know what it was at the time, because it was about 33 years ago when I was in the UK in high school there, in an economics class, when my teacher, who was a great economics teacher, Mr. Smythe, started talking about the concept of planned obsolescence, built-in obsolescence in the car manufacturing automobile industry. And I remember to the day thinking, hold on a minute, that can't be right. There's got to be some law against that, surely, because not only is that planning for a product to fail in effectively 7 years a complete waste of resource, but from a purchaser, from a consumer, what an absolute rip-off. So apparently, to my horror, it was a legitimate business strategy that is not looked at greatly today, but it's still happening. It's still built-in obsolescence. Apple have got huge sort of petitions to stop what they're doing in some instances, and they'll say they're doing a bit of recycling, but really they need to look at their business model a bit more closely. And that's how I started on this journey that led me to leading the circular economy work at the Sustainable Business Network. Now, has anyone heard of the Sustainable Business Network before tonight? Okay, good. A few of you. So we are a wonderful organisation, but not a great profile. So we're trying to get our profile up there. But we, just as a bit of context, we are the largest and longest established business sustainability organisation in New Zealand. And this year is actually our 20th anniversary. So we're going to have a party, and maybe you'd like to come along. But just in terms of what we do, we work collaboratively around trying to shift systems. So we've been hearing from Jenny about the systems thinking. So we're working around shifting systems around waste, around the carbon we emit, and how we can start to regenerate nature as opposed to degrade it, or even start to restore it. Let's regenerate, make it better than it was. We work to upskill and build capability amongst businesses around sustainability. And there's some wonderful examples of what's happening in the network and broader that we look to profile. And you saw that example of the beer made out of bread, for example, previously. And a big element is collaboration. So no one organisation can shift systems alone. And so we need to
play a key role in that connecting up system. So on to the next slide, specifically around the circular economy. So, as an organisation, we don't have the power to shift the system to a more circular one. So we're trying to increase our impact, and part of that is creating this public-private partnership, which we launched last year, which is all around enabling businesses to transition at speed and scale by producing accessible tools. And so those are some of the partners that work with us and help fund us to deliver some of these tools. So on the next slide, we'll see that effectively, a key foundation piece of work is understanding what is the current state of play with the circular economy in New Zealand, what are the levers for change, and then where does SBN and other players and actors, what roles do they play? So we do this periodically. The last time we did this was last year. So this report goes through the 6 key leverage points and actions for business. There's more specific ones there as well. And so it's had over 900 downloads since it was launched. So that's sort of reasonable. And what I think I'll do, well, I'm going to do actually, because it's on the slides, is I'm going to just quickly run through those sort of 6 leverage points for businesses to transition. That we understood by talking and working with hundreds of businesses since about 2014. And those leverage points are consistent, but their progress towards them varies, of course. So the first one on the next slide, obviously, let's start at the design phase. That having 80% of the environmental impact locked in at the design phase. So let's look to design products that can last for a long period, can be dismantled and repaired, and are easily recyclable. And I suppose the knowledge is there when we speak to designers. They say, James, we know how to do this. We know how to design for a circular economy. In fact, we want to do it, but no one's asking for it. That's starting to change. But the second leverage point is that demand and that procurement. As businesses, we all procure. How can we procure for a circular economy? How can we look at whole of life costs, not just initial upfront costs? And then on the other side of that, businesses providing those services and products, it's not going to sell just because it's a circular product. It needs to outperform its linear counterpart in terms of performance or just general desirability. So, it needs to be fit for purpose. The third one is around adopting business models, and getting a great summary of some of the business models that businesses need to adopt and move into, like sharing economy, product as a service. And so we recognise that there are certain barriers to shifting existing businesses to the new business models, and that's something that we're looking to help with. For example, we know within the financial system, in terms of moving to from selling a product to selling a service, there's a whole lot of myriad of financial implications. And so we've been working with Grant Thornton, and we're going to be releasing a report on the 18th around how the financial system needs to change to unlock these circular business models. And there's an event on the 1st of September, which they come along to. So fourth one is the infrastructure, and I suppose that's really a key area where Veolia will play a role in that that infrastructure provision for reprocessing. Now, how do we actually keep those materials in flow throughout the system? And of course, so New Zealand, we're a small population, geographically dispersed, so we quite often hear that there's there's a processing plant, in the North Island, but we're in the South Island. How do we get, the transport, carbon emissions? So this is something that we need to solve, and the government needs to play a key role in that. Fifth one is embedding the new technology. Well, some of it's not new anymore, but it's using 3D printing, artificial intelligence to make processes more efficient, track materials right through a process, so let's say material passports for in the building sector, so that we can see where they come from, how long they've been used, and what to do with them when they're finished with their first life. And then sixth area, we need to understand what are those regulatory levers coming through, and there is lots that businesses need to be aware of, and not only in New Zealand, but of course throughout the world. In fact, France is probably one of the leading nations in terms of legislation around the circular economy. And here in New Zealand, there is certain types of hard to recycle plastics being banned. Government saying right, no more. Mandatory product stewardship for certain products, so like electronic goods, for example, now they'll be coming in, and then there's a big movement that the government are looking at, or a petition made to David Parker the other week around the right to repair. So this is a movement in the world where producers of goods are going to need to start to make their effectively products more easy to repair. So that was a bit of a sort of high-level view of some of those sort of leverage points. Now, there is a video here. I don't know. So we tried this before, haven't we? So I don't think that we're going to hear anything there, are we?
Right.
Right.
Can you hear anything?
No, but Jenny, actually, if yeah, okay. So sometimes you have to pick a button to enable the sound on your computer to. I don't know where that button is, but.
I don't know either.
Yeah, no, don't worry. Let's just skip that video because I can talk about it. But effectively, what that video is illustrating is a key tool from the SPN as part of that public-private partnership that really enable and cuts across a lot of those, not all of those, but a lot of those leverage points. And it's really about connecting those businesses looking for solutions around the circular economy to the solutions that are out there. So we launched in April, and we have, does anyone want to take a guess of how many circular solutions are on this directory that are available for businesses in New Zealand right now to pick up the phone and engage with that solution, right from recycling, right through from products as a service to repair to designing for circular economy. Business, so not business to consumer. So 18 solutions. No, more? 421. Bit less. 300. So they've got 300 solutions, and we haven't even captured all of them right there across the country that are wanting to provide solutions.
Oh, sorry, I was including the ones you hadn't captured.
No, excellent. Well, that's the part of it. So if we can talk to you about who those others are, that would be great. So I mean, a lot, many of those solution providers have multiple solutions. And Edge Environment on there as a solution provider, so very good. Yeah, look, you've got lots of so maybe we didn't count all of those. But okay, and so really this is how we structured it. So it's we'll see there's a bit of a hierarchy on terms of those circular models, and looking at let's redesign at the start, but then huge link with carbon, let's regenerate nature. And really the sort of recycling or composting in many cases it provides the lowest value opportunity for so I mean it's as Jenny was saying, a lot of the default thinking is around let's recycle, but we cannot recycle our way out of a linear economy into a circular economy. That is just putting a bit of recycling at the end of a linear economy, and that's not going to get us where we need to go from a waste and from a carbon perspective. Anyway, we all need entry points, and we need to be pragmatic and realistic that a lot of this technology isn't yet available. So, recycling in many instances may be the best option we have now. So let's design for that. Let's not lock in a recycling linear economy. Next slide is we've got it's a hub of circular economy activity in New Zealand. So got case study. So this is Maucor Exchange. Well, that's Toby from Maucor Exchange in reality. And what they offer is something that Jenny was talking about earlier on. Is this it's a marketplace for spare capacity of goods within a large organisation like a hospital. They've got X amount of technical equipment in one hospital and none in the other. And so there's no real system at the moment to connect that up. And so that's what you move to Exchange. Anyway, we put out lots of case studies and examples there. Lady Circular News, just so you know what businesses need to know that's coming up. And what else have we got? Yes, we've got other examples of, I suppose, playing in that sort of technology space and looking at that system problem with regards to reverse logistics around manufacturers being able to get products back at the end of their life back to a place where they can be reprocessed. This is where our innovation comes in called Reverse, which is basically a platform that will, on the next slide, enable, at this stage, we're working on the consumer market, where a product that's part of Reverse will be loaded onto the digital interface. And if it needs to be repaired or returned for recycling, the customer can indicate that on their app, and that will automatically send a signal to our partners and say, post to come and pick up that product and take it back to the pre-programmed destination, so for repair. So we're looking to sort of enable that return and build the help build and stimulate the infrastructure of repair and reuse at scale in a way that's easy for the customer and appealing. So that's and the other aspect is that for many, particularly SMEs, small organisations without sustainability management, very poorly resourced and time poor, how can they engage with climate action? And this is where this public-private partnership comes in around providing the climate action toolbox, which is on business.gov.nz website. And effectively, it's a free to access tool specifically designed for SMEs to go on and look at what they can specifically do, start that initial climate action and reduction in their emission profile. Many companies don't really understand, small companies don't know where to start, don't know what the sort of terms and languages are, and that's a real barrier. And we, months or so ago, we incorporated a carbon calculator into that tool as well. So that is a free resource. And so I think, looking at, where most of the audience are from in terms of businesses, let's come from larger organizations, and we're working with large organizations to promote that through their supply chain, so that their suppliers, many of which are small organizations, are not left dangling when you ask them, well, tell us what you're doing around climate action. You say, well, tell us what you're doing, and here's a tool to help you demonstrate what it is. And so another tool that we've developed is quite a basic one, is that, you know, how can businesses start to regenerate nature? And so particularly in this sort of disconnect, if you're making widgets and you want to start to regenerate nature, how do you sort of bridge that gap? And so this is a bit of a pathway in terms of how businesses can start to think about that and the mechanics to be able to do that. So that's on our website as well. And that is, what else is, oh yeah, well let's just go circular. Why not? Oh, thank you.
Thank you, James. So we invite the current panel speaker to come back to the stage. Let's see. You can, hope you thought about your questions. And just that I think we'll be able to share the presentation afterwards, something to you and the video. That's fine, yeah. So, do you have any questions in the room or online? Or we?
I have a question for Jenny. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, Felicity Underhill. I'm from Fortescue Future Industries. Jenny, how does that circular economy systems thinking that you were talking about, how does that deal with both the scale of global consumption, which I think Emma mentioned is 1.6 times Earth at the moment, and what I'm assuming is an ever increasing acceleration of that consumption?
Yeah, so I guess what you were touching on is that the current system is having this feedback loop where we're needing to consume more material and it's accelerating. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so, you know, we will run out of, if we keep on with that rate of consumption, we'll run out of things that we can be recycling and reusing. So what does that systems thinking do to approach that?
Yeah, so look, I think when you start looking globally, it's quite difficult to map out the system because it gets quite overwhelming and complicated. I'd say, I guess, if you look at your organization and what you do at Fortescue, it'd be around like mapping your own ecosystem to start with, and really looking at, you take one product, one area of your business, bring in different people from different perspectives that don't necessarily know everything about that product, but like, people in finance and people in commercial and people in procurement. So really bring that ecosystem together and really looking at what you do from all those vantage points, and also looking at this with your supply chain. So up and downstream, and what sort of flow and effect it's having, and sort of looking at the environmental impact it's creating. And then I guess in mapping that system, then you can find intervention points of like things that keep coming back, or parts of the system that you feel you have an influence over, and then exploring what that might look like. There's a range of tools that exist out there, but hopefully that gives you an idea. I think it's starting with just having a conversation with people and understanding what is the flow and effect of what we do, because often we don't really realize until we start mapping it out and exploring.
Cool, thank you.
Could I build on that a bit? Because in terms of an example of that systems thinking in a very practical sense, and how it sort of hits the ground. If we think about the situation with plastic packaging, and that is, it's pretty much a disaster now, but it was, heading to much more of a disaster a few years ago. And so there's a couple of things there at a sort of global level. There's agreement, understanding, who pulls the levers there, from governments to large manufacturers, getting them in a room and effectively, agreeing that change needs to happen, and what that looks like, and what are the intervention points that need to come along. And so we are seeing some signs of, maybe some positive signs there. I mean, still a huge amount of work to do. But then in our experience in New Zealand is that that systems thinking, the SBN has been talking. We started talking about systems thinking in 2014, and actually we had to dial it down because no one really knew what we were talking about. And then we recognised that plastic packaging is an issue, and we started to look at that in 2018. And what the situation was then was that there was lots of innovation going on, but it was disparate and unconnected, and effectively making the situation worse. Lack of coordination, lack of understanding of what individual businesses can do. So we effectively did diagnostics on the New Zealand system, highlighted some intervention points, and then, but the most effective thing was just bringing the system together, that ecosystem Jenny was talking about, and just got them talking and agreed. And so from that, there's been a huge amount of coordination that stems from that that initial work.
Maybe just one point, it's data. If you have data about your business, you may be able to convince somebody that you are not actually polluting, or not as much as they thought, or that you may need to collaborate with your neighbors or your council to actually have a scalable, viable facility. So instead of being in opposition with your local council for the license to operate, you might be partnered to deliver a circular solution. But how do you start? You need data. So I think that's also something that to start with, you know what you do, what you generate, what you impact.
Darren Swiss, Kansas. I was interested in the comment you made, and I like it, James, that you can't recycle your way out of the system. I wonder, given that for most of us, the most direct form of recycling we have is via our household waste, to what extent the recycling systems in New Zealand are actually, strengthening, supporting the linear model, given that, my wife and I can feel very virtuous that we've got a very small waste bin going out and a chock-a-block full recycling bin, but I'm aware that in Undercargo, at least, components of that are just stockpiled and sort of landfill together to be reclaimed one day in the future that hasn't come yet. So does recycling actually in some cases just strengthen the?
Well, I think it does, unless it's sort of carefully managed and planned out. I reckon, so there's we don't have solutions in place yet for a circular economy, and some certain business models aren't at scale yet. So we need to sort of look at that pipeline and not lock in an infrastructure of recycling for 50 years. How can and I don't know what the answer is, but how can we, have a transitional model that that enables the technology we have now to be optimized, but enables that space, doesn't lock in capital for 50 years. And so, for example, that's something that we're very much obviously aware of and looking to try and influence. So, for example, the government or Ministry of Environment recently were releasing their consultation on infrastructure for effective waste, and they talk about circular economy and they actually understand it, but trying to translate that into infrastructure is tricky. But so there was a lot of talk about recycling, but not much about reuse. So for example, reuse has got to be part of the circular economy, and so from product perspective or packaging perspective, that's going to need centralized wash stations, for example. So that's the sort of infrastructure we need to look at it. And the same, I think people and organisations who build recycling centres can no doubt build wash centres. So it's that sort of planning I think we need, rather than we need to sort of recycle, and that comes also down to the understanding of the circular economy, and it's a different economic system that we need, not a better version of the one we need. Just simply a better version of it.
I'll just add something to that, your comment, and actually that comment that was made before made me think of, I don't know if you guys remember, about a year ago, there was this big drama in the UK because Boris Johnson told a class of young kids I can just see views that they were at the whatever the offices in Downing Street, and all these young kids there, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and he said, "Well, guys, the news is we're not going to recycle ourselves out of this crisis." So effectively, the message, recycling is not the solution, and all these kids were like, that's what they've been drawn into, and there was this big thing about telling the next generation not to recycle, but it was an awkward way of saying, actually, recycling is not the solution, and I thought it was an awkward situation, but actually, what he was saying in effect was correct, in a sense. But to add to what you just said around infrastructure, I think as a consumer, maybe rather than thinking about like what we can do with recycling, is about thinking what are we buying. I think that's really a good way of seeing it, And I think that put that responsibility of the buyer and the producer, and putting the responsibility back on the producer.
David. By the way, if there's any question online?
Derek Swale from Porton. We are a research institute with quite a strong focus on marine and climate change. What role do you think large corporates have in working in that new space? And you talk about designing for the future, so incorporating design for the future, but also looking at that edgy space where the technology isn't proving yet. It's going to take quite a lot of effort to get it to a commercial space. Probably one thing.
Well, again, great question. In terms of that, how do the large organisations, innovate and when they're still getting rewarded for the current model they're in. So how much resource that they put into it. So I mean, in our experience, we're finding it's the startups that really are coming up with that innovation at pace, but not scale. So therefore, the role for larger organisations is maybe to help them scale or purchase them, for example. So for example, the likes of Mint Innovation and their bioprocessing around electronic waste, and looking to create a distributed network of processing plants, is a technology they're looking to scale, as a sort of startup. That's what we're seeing.
There's there's an example as well that just talks to what needs to happen. So collaboration and MG's new partnership model is really important, so that while large organizations have potentially investment and resources, they might not have necessarily the idea or the system change in place. And so if you look at an example where Adidas partnered together with Allbirds, which is a sustainable footwear company. So actually Allbirds went to Adidas and said, hey, why don't we do something circular together? And they co-designed a fully circular pair of shoes that then they use the manufacturing power of Adidas and the thought leadership of Allbirds, and they come up with a different product. So I think large organizations need to start opening up to like smaller businesses or other either what they would consider as competition or totally unrelated industry partners that might help them drive that innovation and then reposition them on the market with those circular ideas. But it needs to come from the top, and that shift in mindset to not feel having to protect their IP, but rather open up, like to have that open source approach.
Yeah, maybe I don't want to be in a position, but also instead of just targeting innovation all the time, just to look at what's happening already. You were mentioning marine aquaculture space. There are a lot of solutions already. Closing the loop for organic material. Going back to the point I said about data, the key things to unlock is the scale, and that's something that might be a challenge in New Zealand. You mentioned the size of the country. That's true, but as long as you start building up data, you're able to look at your neighbors. To come back, there are banks in the audience who go to banking system saying, look, we have that amount of material. There is this solution somewhere. How we connect together? I mean, maybe the bankers here around, you can say that there are a lot of people willing to invest in ESG options. So if you come to a table with data, a solution, I'm pretty sure that we'll find money to start working on it. Innovation is live. It will come. There are already a solution, and that's what we wanted to show to you today. We also have R&D, but what I mentioned here was it's no longer R&D. So I think that's something. But when we talk about circular economy, it's still something that people think it's new, it's coming to the century. It's already there. So let's have a look at what's happening.
This is Rahul from FNZCCI. Just on your last comment around what the consumers are buying, right? So consumers, when they're buying, the biggest consideration is the price point. So how do products coming from a circular economy, compare in the real world against products coming from the linear economy? And my guess is it's probably not comparing really well. And if it's selling for a premium, on an Albert's example, are businesses doing a good enough job of explaining that to the consumers, making them aware of what it is, and therefore willing to pay a premium? So that's an open question anyone who wants to.
Yeah, well, it is a challenge, and so we see sort of surveys say, yeah, consumers will pay more for X, Y, Z, and then businesses say consumers aren't paying more for, and so there is, it's that definition of value and what consumers define as value, and if they're defining it as price, it's how can you change that price variable. So for example, and it might be hard for the consumer to get at this stage instantly, but let's take example blunt umbrellas. So a premium about $100 compared to a cheaper model, but designed to last for a lifetime. So in terms of cost per use, is it's going to be that's where the value would be. And then also, if we change the sort of some of those business models to access rather than ownership, if you pay per use for a drill, for example, then I've got a drill, I've used it 3 times and I've had it for 40 years, but so that's per use a lot of money. So I could probably save a lot of money by just paying for the time I needed a drill three times, and that's a dual responsibility for businesses to present those solutions in a desirable way, and it's got to be desirable and accessible. And I think we're really at the infancy of that, and I agree. A lot of Allbirds and Adidas sort of collab. That's not accessible for the majority of the world. But I'd like there, but
I think the other thing is it's hard. It's true as a consumer, it's hard to have that whole of life thinking. When that example that was Jenny mentioned, or someone mentioned about the washing machine that you can bring back and maybe just change the part rather than change the whole thing. How frustrating. I think all consumers that we had a toaster at home and the thing wasn't working, and good luck. I've got my brother-in-law's really good handyman. We just opened it, fixed it. It was just the magnet had a bit of dust on it, and I would have been that if I didn't have the expertise. But consumers adopting that whole of life thinking and making it easy for them to adopt that whole of life thinking is, I think, an important part. And the other thing is that that sharing models, like consumers being happy to think differently about ownership, I think is important as well. Like, again, I take a personal example where I live. We've only got a small hedge, but I really wanted the trimmings. I was sick of paying $50 to drop off my trimmings at the landfill or the reprocessing plant. So I invested in this mulcher, but it didn't make sense just for me. So I offered my 2 neighbors to actually share it, and we just found an arrangement. And that was actually, I didn't do it just from a circular economy perspective. I did it from a financial perspective because I was paying $50 to actually dump just a bag of green leaves. So I think it's about, I guess it's a challenge as consumers to change our way of thinking.
Maybe just to add on that, sorry, it's also when you talk about closing the loop locally, you're also reducing your exposure to external factors. I'll take just 2 examples. If you take electronic waste, at some stage it might be more expensive to source raw material from overseas instead of having actually a mine nearby because you have recycling facility. If you take another one, producing your own energy from your waste, you can actually be self-sufficient and stop relying on the external market, which is the situation that we know today. In a country like New Zealand, really far from the main spot and hub for gas and oil, generating your own energy, whatever it is, it's probably smart. And then the impact on your final products that you're actually cheaper or the price remains steady and you're independent from the market overseas.
One question online.
Yep. So Rachel asks, do we have networks that can connect different organisations where we can publicise our waste or end-of-life products that may be of interest to other organisations?
Well, there are, yeah. So we have the directory, and that's something we're actually looking at. But there's examples of civil share, which is in the sort of civil engineering and construction space, where that's a platform where you put waste materials on, and there's a group of users there who can take it. And there has been various attempts at this, and it's interesting. I haven't seen that example that you showed, Jenny, which sounds similar in New Zealand, and there hasn't been a successful one yet because it sort of needs a business model, and the business model is a bit difficult to nail down. So who's going to run it? Who's going to fund it? It will need sort of money to put that together, and then you need to, how can you valuetize that connection? And so it's Mutu Exchange sort of do something similar within internal organizations, large organizations, and there's various sort of startups who will be trying to do this ongoing until someone cracks it, and then a lot of organizations do use services like Maucor and Jenni Philippe who can help be that a manual redistribution waste product.
We have time for one last question.
So first of all, great presentations, a lot of learning in this. Thank you for that. So Zoe and I, we work at Vodafone, and I head up the procurement and supply chain function of Vodafone. And we address from our team more than $1 billion spent every year. Now, majority of that spend is technology, switches, routers, and also devices, Apple, Samsung, what you all use. And a lot of this spend, a lot of this equipment then gets decommissioned because we're constantly evolving our architecture, our network. 5G, for instance, we decommission 2G, 3G equipment, things like that. But there is nothing that we do about it. Nothing. So all the devices, Apples and Samsungs of the world, there's nothing to do about it. The equipment gets scraped. So there isn't anything circular. But I believe that sustainability is the future of procurement and supply chain. So what I want to do is I want to stop talking and I want to start acting. I want to start moving forward, putting it into action. So what I've been discussing with Alex before is the possibility of building a equipment recycling processing plant. But what I want to advise on are two things. First is, how do you go about assessing the feasibility of building a equipment waste processing plant? And secondly, if there is economies of scale required to build something of this effect, How do you go about doing that? And are there other candidates in New Zealand, other companies in New Zealand who would want to partner with us and go about it with you?
Well, I would suggest there are companies who would like to collaborate, and but the other point I'd make is, are you sort of, jumping to a solution rather than sort of looking at why you're needing to reprocess those products, and it means sort of looking obviously right up the global supply chain and looking at business models of those suppliers. And it goes back to that sort of how do we maintain the highest level of value within our economy. And final point, we've got a sustainable leaders group, community of practice, which would be good to sort of talk to you about getting involved and connecting with other procurement professionals who are basically trying to work out the same thing.
If I can also add to that, I think you can look upstream and downstream. That the recycling facility would be the downstream option. But as with the power of procurement that you currently have as an organization, there's definitely scope for you to establish some different requirements. I think if we set different standards on the specification of what we procure and sort of take that whole of life costing and really are clear on expectation around environmental impact, take back scheme, putting into those requirements, for instance, that the material is to be taken back by the manufacturer, for instance. Even if you don't enforce it straight up, because obviously those sort of services are not necessarily available yet, it starts signaling to the market that, Vodafone, for instance, is expecting that. And potentially talking to your peers or adjacent organization companies in that industry to start setting those standards, which then creates a different response to what the manufacturers are doing. But in terms of feasibility of recycling facilities, we've done similar work in Australia for certain regional projects around that to look into the sort of scale and volume that's required. And as you said, sort of partnering and looking at other stakeholders in your region to get that scale at the right level. So you're not forcing the market on your own.
Just want to add to the stakeholders just quickly. I think what struck me throughout the conversation is the stakeholder that I think we're talking about is iwi. I think iwi would have a really strong symbiotic relationship with prices and what drives them more. What's the sustainable cultural element to all of these things? And A, they're economic, but B, I think also well established up and down the country. So certainly a partner that I think that you talk about business to business, you talk about not consumer and government and private, but certainly that could almost be the conduit between a lot of these streams.
I think what you can do with that already is that when you start developing a circular economy around HME waste, you start creating steady jobs. Today, HME waste is more initiative from they are trying to do the best of what they can in collecting, promoting, often during weekends, collecting different items, trying to find a first value, resell it, and support people of jobs. But if you reach a scale and you can guarantee the outcomes in terms of purity, quality or volume on a long-term basis, then you start having potential investors and potential off-takers that will actually finance the project. I was mentioning the fact that if you secure the supply of copper in a global context becoming trickier and trickier, you might actually have more clients than you thought. So the problem is to have the right scale and to guarantee to this company that will use your copper that you can actually deliver what they need. And that limits oversell the operator, but you need to secure this processing part. I think there are really upstream and downstream to look at that, but we cannot ignore right now the downstream because we can potentially go back upstream by saying this is copper that is collected from your phone. What can you do to reuse that? And you can talk to Apple and Samsung saying now we have this amount us, for that one here sitting in New Zealand, can you take it back? But today, you need data and you need to secure this volume to be able to push this problem.
Well, with my old hat, it was NZCCI, investment things there. It's not, as I said, it's about data, right? So doing the feasibility on a recycling factory is actually not that difficult. And if you've got the data, you can understand what that scale amount is needed. And then there are areas where you can have competition with your, you know, if you can go and talk to Spark about actually them being involved as well to get that scale, because it's not an area that you're going to compete by. And that, and
So you
some,
want to be the first one, but they can come after.
I mean, before I moved to Corton, we had some discussions and even more monopolistic industry about how they work together to achieve environmental solutions that would be better for everyone. So that wouldn't be from
Thank you.
I just wanted to actually look back to your first question, actually, in a sense. I've been thinking as we talk about, like, so I'm moving the discussion bit somewhere else, but we talk about the systemic changes, and I feel like there's almost a parallel to, you've heard about what's happening in the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, TCFD, which is about using the existing financial system to basically drive investment in sort of more low carbon, moving the economy to decarbonization. And it's actually based around risk in what you invest. And I feel there's a parallel to this in a sense, like if you think about, there is also risk in investing in supply chains or in companies that actually don't take a circular economy approach. You sort of think of the regulation risk that was talked about today. You know, some countries like France, you're going to actually regulate quite hard. It's going to come faster and quicker. And there's also the supply chain risk that we know, depleting resources of natural materials, etc. So if you're sort of a company, and I know there's banks in here, maybe some people want to add to this, but if you're thinking about where you're putting your money, thinking about risk is another way as well to look at it. And although there's probably not something called the Task Force for Circular Economy Financial Disclosure, it's actually a very similar parallel. And we're actually already seeing that with Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosure. So organizations now looking at where's there a nature risk in what I'm investing in. So I think that it makes a lot of sense to leverage the existing system already. Yeah.
Thank you, David. Just to conclude, because we run out of time, we will continue this conversation just afterwards for the one not long. Just to thank a lot Veolia as a sponsor, much appreciated. The French Embassy for supporting this event, also much appreciated. All our speakers, to Alexandre, Jenny, James, and David, thank you very much for your presentation. All the participants here in Auckland and also online in different countries. And a special thanks also to Gina and Alexandre for putting this event together. It's quite challenging, and it's done. Well done.